go. Okay, so we're starting out with a central vanishing point on our paper, right? Somewhere in the middle. And then the other thing we're starting out with is rectangles. I'm going to actually draw two different shapes. I'm going to draw, you can do this in your sketchbook if you'd like to practice, rather than starting on your nice sheet of paper. I'm actually going to start with I want to start with an L shape because I know that I want to do an L-shaped building. I'm going to make this little kind of section of the L a little bit shorter. Make that straight. Okay, and then I'm also going to do a rectangle, and we'll talk about both. Yes, rectangles. So both of these are going to become buildings, and they're starting out as two-dimensional shapes. And then the way we make them three-dimensional is by bringing them back to the vanishing point. So going from each corner of your shape, this one is just barely showing, so we're still going to use a line that goes back from there, even though it looks really close together. Definitely there, that point. Anywhere the building has an edge, we need to draw it back to the vanishing point. Like that. So there's our L-shaped building. And here is our rectangle building. Okay, so you're going to take this line, this specific line right here, and these ones. We want to replicate those, make parallel lines that are way further down these receding lines to make it look like the building actually stops, because right now it looks like the two buildings just go infinitely to the center of the page, but we don't want that to happen. We want them to actually stop at like a street. I'm going to zoom in really quick. So I'm going to draw in really close to the bottom, but not quite yet, not quite to that vanishing point. I'm going to draw in that's L shape again. Oops, that one was a little off. This one, those really skinny lines are hard, but you'll get it. And then you can erase these base lines. Okay. So then I have one building. I'm going to do the same thing with this other building, but this one I only really need, because of where I put it, I really only need, if they're the same, like, if we want them to look similar on the base, I would look at this distance that you made between the bottom of the L-shaped building and that vanishing point and kind of mimic that over here on this big rectangular skyscraper. And erase those. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this, but really basic windows. Your windows are probably going to start a little bit down from the building. They're not going to reach the very tippy top. So I would draw a parallel line in here where I want my windows to begin. And then I'm going to start drawing some evenly spaced orthogonal lines or receding lines. And if you want to be super precise, you can actually measure some in. So let's say I want them to all be 1/4 of an inch. So this is exactly like in that video. This is making that checkered that checkered floor. That's what this is. So if you need to watch that video again, we can definitely watch that checkered floor spot. And then you're going all these back, lining it up with the vanishing point each time. Going through each one. Make sure I have that vanishing point. Beep. It's really important so that it looks not super funky. Oops, sorry, getting off. Okay. There we are. I wasn't totally perfect on all those. That's okay. Let's pretend my windows have a stopping point, and I'm actually going to draw in another parallel line right down here and erase some of those ends of the lines. Now, if you wanted to be super technical, you can do what they did. Basically, if we turn this way, all of a sudden that looks like the floor. And we need to find a line on this. If this was our horizon line, where our vanishing point is, that's where you can find a line and maybe make a second point. And that point can help you make this really clean and continue it that way. And what that does is basically, this is making really fancy windows, guys. We're going super fancy skyscraper. You can also gauge this like I showed you in that example the other day and do it in a lot less precise way. But this is a good challenge for you, especially those of you who find this fairly simple, the idea of this three-dimensional. You should definitely go back and watch that video and try this. Okay, what this is doing is creating some lines for me. The first line is where, so you can go where it, on this very first line that I threw out, where it intersects that second line, actually goes through all of them right there. Let me grab my pen so that you can see this better. Yes, you could do, this is, I'm literally just giving this to you as this is a tool. This is not necessarily a full-on requirement. This is a tool of trying to get you playing with this a little bit more. Oops, that one was a little far away. That one was also far. So the idea is that you're following this guy back, and they'll get closer and closer together. Although I kind of goofed up that one a little bit. And I'm doing it in pen, which I would not advise. Now they're getting tinier and tinier. And eventually they're gonna go down and be so close to each other that, and that part of that is I did these really teeny tiny windows, but that they're gonna get so close to each other that they will eventually turn into just thick, some shading. eventually at the bottom. So I would recommend maybe not doing exactly, maybe you could do 1/2 inch apart. But let me see if I can draw this in for you really fast. And then the other thing that you can do is shade or erase certain lines so that you don't have a zillion windows going down the side, but sometimes windows are spaced apart. If you've ever been in Juneau and seen the state office building or the federal building, they have windows that are spaced apart. So one section would have windows and then one section you would erase to be the like cement area in between. I'm gonna go in and draw these in with a little bit more pen. I think you can pick like, well, so if you pick this point, you would get, yeah, what would you, though, you would get some, it would definitely change your window size, huh? Let's play with it on this one. Okay, we're gonna do a little bit simpler this time. Going for simple. This time I'm not doing these tiny little like cube windows. I'm going to just do these parallel windows, but I still want them to get closer and closer together. So I am gonna draw up at the top. I'm gonna make sure that my windows start parallel to both sides of this L-shaped building. Like that. And then I'm gonna draw from the edge of those windows, I wanna draw a orthogonal line back to back to that vanishing point. So there I have the face of my building. What you can also do is, what I did in mine is I really just did it by eye, and slowly I just kept going down and tried to make it a little bit smaller each time. But what is really important is that every line that I'm making here on this side, sorry, let that focus again. Every line that I'm making on this side, look, these lines are still parallel to the top of that building. And these lines over here are going to be parallel to the top of this building. So I should never be moving my ruler around. I should be trying to make these as straight as possible. As they move backwards in space, they're going to get closer and closer together, which makes this look like you have this big building that is going down and down and down. The more buildings you have layered upon themselves, so if I had another building kind of in here, then you don't have to go all the way down with these windows. So you can see these are getting smaller and smaller, and eventually I will literally just have probably some hatch marks in the base of that building to show that that's the bottom. Here. Oops, that wasn't very straight. That's okay. The other thing we can do down at the bottom of the building is give some shading, which is what we're going to talk about tomorrow, and I'm going to do another little video on shading with pen. And Macy did it last year a little bit, so she's already practiced shading with the pens, and some of you, I know Isel has done a lot of stippling, so we'll talk about doing that more, because there is ways, especially with the vanishing point, to create some shading that's coming from the bottom of this building, which is going to be dark compared to the top of the building, which is going to be a little bit lighter.